Okay, let's dive into one of the biggest stories shaping our world, the growing economic showdown between the United States and China. And just to be clear, this is about way more than just trade. We're talking about a high stakes competition for who will lead in technology and really who will write the rules for the global economy. It wasn't so long ago that the big idea was cooperation. The promise of globalization was that if we all traded with each other, our economies would get so tangled up that major conflicts just wouldn't make sense. We built these incredible global supply chains, and the thinking was pretty simple. When we all make money together, we're more likely to get along. But that idea is being seriously tested right now. The relationship between the world's two economic superpowers is getting, well, complicated. It's not just a simple trade tiff, it's a real struggle over influence, technology, and financial power. So, how on earth did we get to this point? Here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the two giants at the center of this story. Then we'll get into the new battlefields where this competition is actually playing out. We'll see how this is literally rewiring the global economy. And finally, we'll tackle that huge question. Is this a new Cold War? All right, so first things first, you gotta understand the two main players. This whole story is really about the dynamic between the established leader and the challenger that's been rising at an incredible speed. For most of our lifetimes, and for a long time before that, the global economic system has pretty much operated on a framework heavily shaped by the United States. That's been the foundation for international trade and finance for decades. So what does that power actually look like? Well, it's a few key things. First, the US dollar is the king of global currencies. That gives the US enormous leverage. America has also had huge influence over major institutions like the IMF and the World Bank. And of course, it's the home of Wall Street and Silicon Valley, the centers of global finance and tech. And then you have the challenger. Honestly, what China has done over the past 40 years is just mind-blowing. It went from being a closed-off country to an absolutely essential piece of the entire global economy. This timeline really puts the speed of that change into perspective. It all started with economic reforms that opened China up to the world. Then, in the early 2000s, it just exploded onto the scene, becoming the world's factory. And today? Good luck finding any major product that doesn't have a part or piece that passed through China. So you've got these two giants on the world stage. Where exactly are they clashing? Well, let's get into the new battlefields, because this goes way beyond just buying and selling goods. The first major flashpoint was definitely trade. You can see it clearly in this chart, the trade imbalance. For years, China was selling way more stuff to the US than the other way around. This gap became a huge political issue and really fueled a much more confrontational relationship. And the friction wasn't just about that imbalance. There were major arguments over things like intellectual property theft and accusations that American companies were being forced to hand over their tech to do business in China. Eventually, this all boiled over into tariffs and major trade restrictions. But here's the key thing to understand. As big as those trade fights were, the real high-stakes game is now all about technology. This is where the competition is fiercest and where the long-term consequences are the biggest. See, both Washington and Beijing have come to believe that controlling the future of tech is everything. We're talking about things like advanced computer chips, artificial intelligence, and 5G. This isn't just about who has the coolest new gadget anymore. It's seen as fundamental to national security. So how do you even fight a tech war? It's basically a three-step playbook. First, you figure out which technologies are the most critical. Second, you stop your rival from getting their hands on them through export controls. And third, you screen foreign investments to make sure they're not buying up your most strategic companies. Now, this competition isn't just happening between two countries. It's having a ripple effect across the entire globe, forcing a massive rethink of how our world is connected, from the supply chains that make our stuff to the very ideas about how an economy should run. I mean, we all felt this during the pandemic, didn't we? We suddenly realized that these incredibly efficient global supply chains were also incredibly fragile. Having all your eggs in one basket or one country for crucial parts suddenly looked like a really bad idea. That's led to this huge push for what people are calling economic security. Both governments and companies are now racing to build stronger, more resilient supply chains. That means spreading out their manufacturing, bringing some of it back home, and making sure they have secure access to the essentials, like energy, medicine, and of course, tech. And at the deepest level, this is a clash of two very different ideas. On one hand, you have the US model, which is all about market-driven innovation and private companies leading the way. On the other, you have China's approach, which mixes the market with a very strong guiding hand from the state. Both are trying to prove their way is better. And this quote really hits the nail on the head. The First Cold War was defined by military blocs and armies facing off. This new competition, it's being fought with economic policy, with financial tools, and over technological standards. It's a whole different ballgame. So that brings us back to the big, overarching question. After looking at all this intense competition, what does the future actually look like? Is Cold War even the right way to describe what's happening? Broadly speaking, experts see two possible roads ahead. Down one road, the world stays deeply connected because, let's face it, the US and Chinese economies are so intertwined it's almost impossible to pull them apart. But down the other road, we see a decoupling, where the world splits into two rival blocs with their own tech, their own rules, and their own supply chains. Whichever path we go down, the outcome of this rivalry is going to define our world for years to come. It will change everything from international trade to the very technology you use every single day. So understanding this dynamic is absolutely essential for making sense of the world right now. And that leaves us right back where we started, with the question that's going to hang over everything for the foreseeable future. Are we in a new economic Cold War, or is this something totally new? The honest answer is we don't know yet. The next chapter is still being written.